I'm Bonnie. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter, where we take the mystery out of the tarot and help you bring this ancient practice into everyday life. In this podcast, we'll talk about life, tarot, and everything in between. So grab your tarot deck, get comfortable, and start your journey to tarot with Bonnie and Peter. Welcome to Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. I'm Bonnie, and today we're going to talk about reading tarot for yourself. I think this is a really great topic. I think people struggle a little bit with, should I read tarot for myself? Should I get a tarot reading from somebody else? So Peter and I are going to talk about the ways that we read tarot for ourselves and some other tips and maybe strategies that you can use for yourself if you're wanting to read tarot for yourself, or to just give you some more insight and ideas. So Hi, Peter. How are you?
Good, Bonnie. I'm good. Actually. Wet, with the rain.
All the rain.
I know. This morning I took a picture from the back of my house, and it looks like I have a lakefront property, which I do not, but it's wet. Although, you know what? Listen, we're Canadians, so we're going to complain about the weather regardless of what it happens to be in July. You're going to hear us say, oh my goodness, it's so
hot. And there's so many mosquitoes.
It was like, oh my God, it was so cold. So, but I'm doing
Yeah, definitely. There's lots of rain. There was thunder last night, and our sump pumps are hooked up and ready to go because the water table is really high where we live. So in the spring, when everything starts melting and it rains, then the water level goes up. So we have to make sure our basement doesn't flood because, that's happened to us in the past.
Living in an old house, a house is 140 years old. We actually have a trough that runs through the floor of the basement. So we get water, like there's water there now, and it just naturally runs through the hole in the floor and away it goes. So obviously we can't use the basement for significant storage because it does get damp. We've got a dehumidifier running there continuously, 24, like it's running 24/7. But the joys of living in an old house. It freaks out people sometimes. It's like, we walk down to the basement, which looks like a horror movie. You walk down there, and then they see like, a centimeter of standing water in the one side of the house, and they're like, oh my goodness, got a leak. It's like, yeah, we're good.
We're good. We're used to that.
Yeah, the cats like it. They go down there and they lick the water. So,
oh,
I know. So other than that, doing just fine. Thanks for asking.
Good.
How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Happy to be recording this podcast. I love talking about, of course, we love talking about tarot. And this topic especially, reading for myself is something that I do every single day, unless I'm in a real rush in the morning and I can't do it. It's really that practice that grounds me, and I look forward to it. I get up, I have my breakfast, and then the next thing that I do is I come in my office and I do my reading. So it really is a huge part of my life and a huge part of my own personal development, my own spiritual practice, self-reflection. Like, it just offers me so much, and it really fills me up. So I'm super excited about today's topic.
Yeah. So am I. And I think I like looking at it from the evolution or the change of practice of reading for yourself, because again, like you, I have a pretty well established practice in which I read for myself, but it's changed over time. It's gone from doing a reading every day to doing a reading, every week, to doing, my decanic readings, to doing readings based on particular cycles of the year. Reflecting on, we're going to talk about this particular topic. It's thinking about, well, how has that changed or evolved over time? Even set readings like being, okay, well, I'm going to do, a mind, body, spirit reading every day, or, to the kind of more free flowing narrative style that I would use, now. And then, it's funny how over a long period of time to kind of trace the evolution of your own personal tarot practice. But I think the thing we both agree with is the power of reading for yourself. So, and that, if I could offer the first tip, because it kind of, makes sense here is start. If you're thinking going, oh, I'm learning the tarot, I'm figuring out what the cards mean, I've got my book or my course or my podcast or whatever it is, and whatever it is I'm using, but I haven't started doing reading for myself, like trying to interpret the cards. Start.
Uh-huh.
It for a couple of things. It's an amazing tool for insight, and I often think the tarot tells us what we want to know in that time and in that space. But it's also a great tool for learning, like to be able to pull a card or two cards or three cards and to see how they interconnect, and to see, what does this card mean when it's sitting there by itself, and how does that meaning change when a second card comes beside it, and so forth and so on. So I don't know how you feel about that, but I would say, for people, there's not a certain amount of time that says, oh, I have to study the tarot for X amount of days, months, years, or have to know the meaning of all 78 cards. I'm calling bullshit. You can start reading for yourself, I think, at any point in time, because what's going to happen are your readings are going to evolve as your knowledge and practice evolves. So there's no better time to start. If you're not doing readings for yourself, then the best time to start is today. So that's tip number one. If we're going to talk about, right, we're going to talk tips.
Yeah, I love that, Peter. I 100% agree with you. I think maybe what happens is when people are starting to learn the tarot, a lot of people suggest, which we completely agree with, is with pulling a card a day, right? But sometimes I think maybe when we're learning, we view that card pull as more about learning the tarot and not necessarily about what is the message that this is giving me right now, right? We kind of have that like, oh, what does this card mean? And we're sort of trying to figure that out. So, and it's fine either way. I did that with the tarot and I wanted to accelerate my learning. So I pulled 3 cards a day, but that's just me, right? So whatever makes you feel comfortable to be like, okay, I'm going to pull a card a day, and you can still learn the tarot as you're pulling cards for yourself and still getting meaning out of the message from that card. And what I would suggest, and this is what I suggest to people that I work with who are learning the tarot, is that when you pull that card, before you go to the guidebook right away, do some automatic writing. And if you don't know what the meaning of the card is, that's great. Like, what's happening in the card? I've actually started doing this in the past few weeks. I've always done this. I've always done automatic writing before I go to the guidebook, just because I want to see what the author's interpretation or the deck creator's interpretation is of that card. And then, sort of give me more things to think about when I see that card. But what I started doing recently, and just naturally, I don't know why I started doing this, I literally just started describing the card. So I would look at the card and I'm like, oh, there's a person on this card and there's a mountain in the background. Maybe the person had to cross over the mountain to get to where they are. Oh, and they have a key and it looks like they're planting some. So I wasn't even like, I mean, I know a lot about the tarot, but I was literally just describing the card without attaching it to anything at all. And it was bringing up so much insight for me to be like, oh my gosh, like this is so metaphorical about what's actually going on in my life right now. So I would suggest that as well. If you're new to tarot, you're starting to pull cards, to read for yourself, to get to understand the tarot more, just look at the card first. And without trying to figure out what it's saying to you, what's actually happening in the card, and describe that. And then you'll get a lot out of that. And then again, you can go to the guidebook, or if you don't use the guidebook, that's okay too. So yeah, I think there's a lot of benefit to doing that.
And don't dismiss. No, I think that's brilliant. As a matter of fact, you've kind of captured what some longtime practitioners have been saying for years. And I'm thinking of Liz Worth's practice, where she talks about the artistic description. She'll describe the scene that's happening. And I know often she'll recommend, and many practitioners, myself included, will recommend, it's one of the reasons why I think using a deck with illustrated pips is important. But if you're using something like a Thoth or a Marseille, don't be afraid to describe the card anyways, because even the colors that are in there talking about, well, I'm seeing, some blues and some reds. We associate certain things like feelings, for example, to particular colors. So the colors might also draw meaning for you. So it's a great strategy, is just to describe what you see. And you're right. You can, sometimes that alone can be enough interpretation for your reading. You don't have to then go to the book. You're like, okay, look, I got what I needed to get out of there. It was very rich just by describing what was happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm very analytical and I love to test my brain and like, so I really, as much as I say, try not to do this, like I practice this myself, right? Because I want to I know what this card means and this is what it's trying to tell me, but I'm trying to get out of that. And I'm trying to allow the card to speak to me in its own way. And then seeing what that interaction is with the other cards, because like I said, I still continue to pull 3 cards a day. And I like to see what the story is or how those other cards are interacting with each other. So,
okay. So
awesome.
We had a couple of tips that came out of that conversation. Anything else? Like if you were going to give advice to somebody, let's say they start now, they're like, okay, all right, fair enough. I'm going to, Bonnie, Peter, you've convinced me. I'm going to start reading for myself. What would you tell them? What would be the first thing you tell them?
I have a couple of things that I'll start off by saying, and then we'll go from there. But one, I think it's really important to create a space for that. And this doesn't have to be a super elaborate, ritualistic thing. It can be if you have the time and the capacity to do that. But for me, I really ground myself before I connect with the cards. And, I literally close my eyes. I imagine grounding myself, connecting to Mother Earth. I do a little bit of like a blessing and a prayer. And I open up that space with that intention of me connecting with the cards in a way that's for my highest good. And if I'm reading for other people, like for their highest good as well. The other thing I think that's really important, and a lot of times where people might want to reach for the cards, where I don't recommend they do that, is if they're not regulated. Yeah. So, and what I mean by that is if we're really stressed out, we're really anxious about something, or we're really upset, that wouldn't be the most ideal time to reach for the cards, because I think, when we're in that state of dysregulation, when we're stressed out, it's really difficult for us to hear our inner voice because so many other things are going on. So even what the meaning of that reading is supposed to be for you might not even come across because you just can't really see it because you're in that state of distress. So I think your interpretation might be off, and your energy could also affect, what kind of cards you're pulling. And if something a little bit, daunting comes up that you don't want to see, it might make it even worse. So I always tell people, if you're really stressed or anxious, or you want the outcome to, you really have an expectation of I really want it to come out like this, and you're going to ask the cards, the intention behind that, there's a lot of pressure and there's a lot of stress around that. And I really don't think the cards are going to serve you in that moment. And it's not to say that you can't cry. Many times I come to sit down and prepare myself for a reading, and I already know that I'm really filled with a lot of emotions, and I have a really good cry. And I don't reach for the cards at that point. But after that's done, then that's when I'll go to the cards, and I'm like, okay, I've sort of let that out. I've had my moment, and now I can come to the cards in a more sort of calm state. So those are 2 things I would suggest: creating some type of either prayer or intention, something to sort of open that sacred space. And I don't put any electronics on my desk. I put my phone down. My computer is off my desk. I don't know why, but I have this thing about having an electrical device on my desk when I'm using the cards. So I try to keep it as, neutral as possible. So maybe those are 3 things. Sorry, Dave.
No. There's lots of things there. I think there's a lot of great food for thought. You talk about the idea of space, and then sort of connected other things to that concept of, I almost call it sacred space, whether it's emotional space, whether it's physical space. And I think it's really important. And the one thing you also alluded to, which would have been a tip of mine as well, is the idea of intentionality. It's, and I loved your suggestion about going in with being regulated. For me, it's one of the reasons why actually you can't book a client session with me. I put a 4-day window, and I know that sounds weird, but it was actually James Wells who had suggested that and said, there are times when people are extremely distressed, and particularly if they're a client, where they'll reach out and be like, I need a reading now. And it's like, you almost act as a buffer that says, you actually don't need a reading now. What you need to do is something else that either helps, you get to a status of equilibrium, or, whatever it is that you happen to need. And I think it's important when we're working for ourselves as well to be in that space. And I'm not using the word calm, because I think calm is relative to people, but to be at least in a state of equilibrium or regulation, whatever that happens to be. And then, I also think the idea of creating space, and I like the language of sacred space, which is the one that I would use, is to make it repetitive. So for those of you that are watching, you can't see it. I think it's just off to, I guess, what would be my left. But I have a tarot table. So I have a foldable platform that whenever I do work for myself comes out, and it raises the cards up a little bit. For me, I put all 4 elements present. Like you, I like not having technology, except I have my iPad there because as I think I've mentioned many, many times, I can't write with a pencil for a long, it's my go-to, because paper, anyways, for a whole variety of reasons, and maybe some of them are stubbornness, my iPad is there if I need to write anything down. So I love all the things that you touched on. You provided a whole series of tips, but they all sit inside the idea, I think, of creating space, which was the first thing, that you had said. And you talked about physical space if you can, but, more emotional space, which is important. Grounding, shielding as well, I think, which is also something that's important, because you don't want to draw any kind of, negative energy. And I think, I think creating sort of energetic grounding and shielding is important with this kind of work. So, sorry, I feel like I rambled there, but
no, not at all.
I love what you had to say, and really connect to it, because I think the work is special. And I think the work is powerful, which is why I think we both encourage people to not wait and to do your own work. And for that reason, I think it deserves a little bit of special treatment.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Like, it's everything. How you do one thing is how you do everything. Right. So if you're coming into a reading and you're sort of creating that space and like intentionality that this is what I'm going to do right now, that really is a ripple effect for how you do other things in your life. If you come in and you're like, I was going to shuffle these cards and pick a card and then boom, I'm out. Like, then maybe that's a reflection of how we do other things in our life. Right. So.
Even shuffling, that's the other thing too. And I wouldn't have put it as a tip, but sometimes just the way, you mix the cards can be, and I say that, and, I do find it, I think we talked about this with another guest, I find picking up the deck of cards and just shuffling them, even if I'm not going to use them, it's a very soothing, physical activity for me. So, and I have a particular way that feels good when I'm shuffling the cards for myself. So,
and even waking a deck up, like this morning, I tend to work with one deck for quite a while, and then I switch it up and then use another one. So this morning I was like, okay, what deck is calling me today? Like I just sort of had this energy of picking a new deck. So I got a deck that I hadn't used in months. And it's that idea of like waking the deck, right? Like this deck was in its box. Sometimes I have them wrapped, but this one I didn't have wrapped. I took it out, I knocked on it, shuffled it, woke it up. So it is that whole like bringing it back to life and, connecting with the energy of that deck. So
I love that language, waking the deck up. And for those of you that are watching or listening, think about how you do that when you, because it again, right? For me, the first thing I do when I pick up the deck and I'm going to work with it is this, right? It's that kind of just, I don't know what it is, but again, it's something I have done for years. It's like, and I would have called it, but I love the idea of waking it up because it's almost what I feel like I'm doing. It's just shaking out the cobwebs of the deck, especially when you haven't used in a little while, or releasing the energy from the last message or whatever it happens to be. But again, these are all things I think that Bonnie and I are mentioning. The key is, and I've said this phrase many times, is you do you, but figure out with intention what your solo practice is going to look like. And, create that almost as a physical mantra or a physical routine or a physical ritual that happens on an ongoing basis. You do this, then you do this, then you do this. It's almost preparation for a bath, or whatever it happens. Yeah. It's your nighttime routine or your morning routine. It becomes your tarot routine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes it very powerful.
Do you have some other tips that you want to share, Pierre?
Well, I have one that I want to make sure I mention, and it would probably require a physical space, but it doesn't require any more space than you would use to lay the cards out. And that is, leave them out. I know that there are times where, we have a particular question or we think we're getting a certain amount of guidance, and we do our interpretation of the card. We even spend a fair amount of time with it. And then when we're done, we're done. And what a lot of people do is then, okay, they put the cards away, thank the cards for their message, and tuck them aside. My suggestion, and one that has worked well for me over the years, and it's probably been the constant in an evolving practice. So whether it's 1 card a day, 3 cards, or whatever I happen to be working with, I find the one thing I have done on an ongoing basis is I have kept the cards out for a while. And a while could be just until the end of the day. Sometimes with busier or more in-depth work, I'll actually leave the cards out for several days or for a period of time, so I can go back and see if any new reflections have come out, or if I get a card, let's say the 7 of Swords shows up in my spread, just to, mention a card that, Bonnie seems
my stalker.
Your stalker. and it might be, I don't know where this card, what message this card is getting. And then all of a sudden, 2 days later, I'm like, I just found my 7 of Swords moment. And it's coming back to the card and going, 7 of Swords. I know what you were trying to tell me now. I saw your message today. And I think we tend to get rushed because we're like, okay, it's a great tool for insight. Give me my insight and I'll put you away. But I think sometimes the insight comes with time. So if you have the ability, if you can leave cards out in a spot that is relatively visible, that, maybe you walk by a few times a day, and then take a quick glance and see if, even by visual glance, one of the cards like, oh, wait, 4 of Cups. I saw you today in whatever situation it happens to be, or, the Devil, there you go. I saw you today in whatever situation happens to be. So all of those kinds, that would be my one suggestion. You would talk about the idea of doing automatic writing. I always think, look, write it down, whatever capacity that is for you. I think we, both might talk about the idea of electronic energy. But look, if it's a laptop that you have to have out, or a device, or
of course,
then take it out. If it's your phone, then you can always put your phone on Do Not Disturb and use your notes or whatever it is you do and keep track. But set it up so that you're not going to be distracted by something else. But writing down meaning is definitely important. But I also think leaving it out and allowing the the message to ferment, like a fine bottle of wine.
I love that. People say marinate, but I think I like ferment better.
Ferment. ferment. Wine does not marinate.
No, yes. And it's
Wine
funny whenever
breathes.
people
Well, and
say
breathe even, right? Even
breathe,
the idea
yeah,
of breathing, right? Breathing and fermenting, the idea that things sometimes need time,
yeah.
to have their true beauty to come out. Sometimes work with the tarot needs that as well. So allow that to happen.
Yeah, I love that. And I agree. I do the same thing. I have actually my daughter a few years ago, I think maybe for Mother's Day, she got me these little stands, these little wooden stands
Yeah.
that you can stick cards in so they stand up. So I have those that I put at the edge of my desk, and then I put my 3 cards, unless I have other cards that jumped out. I put them on this little stand so that I leave them out for the day. And then the next day when I come to do my reading, then I'll put them away. But yeah, I love that as well. I don't know. There's something about me having to put the cards away right after I do a reading. It doesn't feel so good. So I enjoy keeping them out as well. That's a great tip, Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right.
What about, okay, so if you are going to pull cards, let's say you're going to do 1 card a day, would you have any suggestions as to what would people ask? Like, do we want to get into questions about right? Like what would be something that you would ask the cards? Is it the same question you ask, or is it something different, or what might that look like?
Well, I know for me, the common question is, what do I need to know here right now in this time and in this space? And I know that sounds repetitive, because right here, right now, in this time and in this space means the same bloody thing. But it again, it's that concept of ritual and repetition, because it has almost become, automatic, in the same way prayer might become automatic for people. It brings you in an almost mental space. So that's a common question. If I'm not going for particular insight, if I'm going for particular insight, then I would spend some time. And again, this is, with James Wells as a mentor of mine, that the question can be critical. So spending time developing the question can actually help with the quality of insight that you get working with the tarot. And it's also recognizing that the first question that you ask might not have been the question you were looking to ask in the first place. And if that's the case, the tarot is in all likelihood going to tell you. It will either, through the cards that are emerging, lend itself to another question, or it might be answering the question that you were originally wanting to ask but didn't ask the tarot. So the twofold. One, I think it's totally fine to go with a more open question, which is what I would do often. What do I need to know, in this right here, right now, in this time and in this space? But if you're going to ask something specific, then spend some time developing the question. And then, the third one, and I went through this time in my practice as well. I'm not there now, but I'm not dismissing it, is, the idea of set spreads, the 3-card spread, past, present, future, body, mind, spirit, which are, 2 kind of common ones. And you can find spreads anywhere and everywhere. It used to be, in the olden days where you'd have, books of, 1001 tarot spreads, but, now you can find them, on the internet, or, even through AI, with the development of, whatever tool you use, develop a 5-card spread, with this particular theme in mind. There's all kinds of tools to be able to do that. But then if you're going to use a second source, spend some time to know the questions that you're going to ask. So don't just be, okay, well, I'm going to go take a look at, 3 a.m. Tarot is a source that, online that, I would often use it. It's some great, great spreads. But then I would take some time to internalize them as well. I would change some questions if I wanted them to, adjusted more to my own language or to myself. So again, it kind of goes with that idea of intention. Be ready with, standard question if that's what works for you. But if you're going to use either a prefab spread or a question of your own, take the time to know the questions that you're going to ask. And the last thing is, and this is a practice I've done more and more, I have started to, if I'm asking 2 or 3 questions, I actually shuffle the deck in between questions. So it wouldn't used to have been, I would have looked at positional spreads, and now I'm thinking, okay, well, hold on a second here. If I've got, if I'm looking at 2 or 3 different things and I've created a spread, like if you're taking any of my courses, I will often as some of the spreads I develop in the courses, I call them power periods. They're astrologically linked. They're linked to planetary energy. I'll ask the question and then I'll shuffle the cards again. And then I'll pull 2 more cards and I'll ask the third question, shuffle, pull 2 cards, or whatever it happens to be. So I don't know. That was, again, a lot of tips. General question is totally fine. Take time to work on a question if it's specific. If you're borrowing spreads, which is a great thing to do, great way to learn. Again, for those of you watching, I have a little card. Like, this is how long I have been working with the tarot. I think I brought it out before. I have a recipe box with handwritten spreads on it. And I think the first one is dated like 1999. So, do whatever you want, but take the time to know the spread, to know the positions of the cards before you kind of jump into it and make it intentional. I don't know. What do you think? And what would you add and what would you change about that, Bonnie?
Yeah, I love all of that. I agree. If you're doing a card a day, I think asking the same question makes sense. And it can be very general, right? And you and I don't read the tarot as something that's predictive. So we don't come to the cards and say, what's going to happen today? Or what can I expect today, right? Because I think that's kind of like, if you're going to see something that doesn't look so good, then you already kind of have that energy of like, is something bad going to happen today? So I really approach the cards as, what do I need to know? And that can really help me. So my question is the same every day when I do my daily reading. It's like, what do I need to know right now? And when I ask that question, I ask it sort of from my higher self. I think that when I'm reading the cards for myself, it's like, it's myself talking to me. It's that inner part of me that knows, and it's sort of bringing into light what it is that I need to know to that conscious awareness of myself. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but I don't think of it as something outside of myself that's giving me these messages. It's like, what does that higher part of me want to know? I will say, though, that so I think that's great when you're doing a daily reading. And if you want to switch it up and you need something specific, then you can totally change your question. But if you're approaching the tarot and asking the exact same question all the time, I think that's where there's some boundaries that need to come into place, because then I think we're relying on the tarot to tell us something that we want to know, as opposed to what the message actually is that it's giving to us. So if we keep asking it the same question over and over again, not that that's an open-ended question, but like something really specific, then I think the tarot sort of becomes a crutch or something that we're relying on, that maybe it'd be like, okay, like I keep asking the same thing and I'm either not doing what the tarot's telling me that I should be doing, or I'm not really seeing the bigger picture of this. So I would keep that in mind if you're approaching the tarot for that perspective. The other thing I think is really important is also having boundaries around other people. I never use the tarot to look into what somebody else is thinking or what somebody else is doing. So I never approach the cards like, what does this person think of me? Or, I think that's their business. And I would never want somebody to pull cards to say like, what does Bonnie think of me? Or so I think when you're reading for yourself or even other people, I never entertain those questions. If somebody has a question about another person, then I reframe it so that it's about the person who's asking me, not about anybody else. And I would definitely keep that boundary in place, because I think it's none of our business what other people are thinking, because we can't control them anyways. And I don't think we would want other people to be asking about ourselves in that way either. There was something else
it's voyeuristic in a way, right? Totally. I agree.
100%. So, and it's so funny how many people want to know about what's happening with other people. And
I actually have it on my website as that outline how I read with the tarot. And then just in case people miss that, it goes out for first-time clients. It actually goes out in an email that says, just so you know, questions like, and I give a series of what question, will my spouse, partner, brother, sister, friend, blah, 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 off the table. And, it's just, from an ethical perspective, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's like peeking, it's voyeurism. It's like voyeurism. I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. And we can misinterpret that completely. And then, which brings me to another point of letting go of expectations and I think this is why people are like, well, you can't read for yourself because you're totally biased. But I think where we're heading as a society is we're so caught up, like there's so much noise, there's so much distraction. And now more than ever, people are wanting guidance or insight or clarity, right? And our minds are so busy and so full. So tarot is a really beautiful way to give us that clarity. But if we approach it as that, like getting clarity, getting guidance, instead of expecting a certain outcome, that will make a huge difference. So I think when you are reading for yourself, you do have a bias 100%, but that's okay because the message that's meant to be for you is meant to be for you. So you are going to read it in that way. But if you keep pulling cards to try to get the answer that you want because you have this expectation, it's not going to work for you. So I would really be okay with like, okay, I have to, and sometimes I approach the tarot like that. I ask a question and I'm like, Bonnie, are you going to be okay with what the tarot is going to tell you? Because if you're not, then don't ask that question. So I think that's really important as well, is letting go of your expectations, but know that you will have a bias when you're reading for yourself. But that's the point, because your imagination is your intuition. And I think people forget that, when they see something in a card, they think like, well, I just made that up. Well, yeah, maybe you did because that's your imagination, but your imagination is also your intuition. So there's sort of that nuance there when you're reading for yourself.
Yeah, I love when you talk about the idea of like acknowledging that of course we are coming. Of course we're coming with a bias. Of course we're coming. It's one of the reasons why I think leaving it out allows your message to marinate a little bit as well, because you're not approaching the tarot necessarily from the first message that comes to mind. Because sometimes the narrative we create initially is the one we wanted to hear in the first place, based on those cards, right? Because often, upon reflection, we know the answers that we're trying to ask. Right, so.
Yeah, for sure. The other thing too is when you're asking questions, and this is about something that you want an answer to, don't be so vague in your questions. So if you're trying to decide between two options, don't ask two questions in one question. Like, should I do this or should I do that? Or what can I expect if I do this, or what can I expect if I do that? If you ask that in one question in one card pull, you don't know if you're answering the do it or the don't do it.
Correct.
So I'm a Libra, so I have a lot of and it's funny, today I got the Two of Swords because it's always like, I gotta make a decision. It's so hard for me to make a decision. I think that's why I love tarot so much, but I do it in two lines. So I'm very specific. If I'm trying to see the outcome or, sort of the messaging, if I make this decision, what can I expect? If I make this decision, what might I expect? I do it as two separate lines. So this line is about this situation and the next line is about that situation. So I'm not getting confused as to what it is that it's answering.
Two of Swords, there you go. The Libra card answer.
I know. Yes. But I'm realizing about the Two of Swords, and that was the other thing that came up for me today, is that a lot of the decisions, like when I'm making a decision, am I making that decision from a place of fear, like from a place of dysregulation, or like how am I really making that decision?
Harder head, right? Harder head.
Yeah. So it's very valuable. It's not necessarily about what the decision is going to be, but from what part of me am I making that decision? Am I making that decision from the scared part of me or from the part of me that's like, yeah, let's do this? And that can, that in turn can make you decide what it is that you want to do. So that card, it's changing for me. And that's what happens too. When we do readings for ourselves, the meanings of the cards have a tendency to either become broader or change a little bit over time. We see it in a different way. So the more you work with the cards, the more of a relationship you're going to form with them.
Totally. And I really glad that you mentioned that. And I also think too, it can sometimes, for some cards, it can soften the edges of some challenging cards. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I've talked before, one of my favorite cards in the tarot deck is the Tower. It wasn't always that way. When I would have started learning the Tower would have been that, oh my God, that explosive card of change and card of Mars and so forth and so on. But because as you work with the Tower would come up at times where things weren't working for me and I needed to tear them down and to rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
And you would notice that particular pattern. So it would stop being a fear of the card coming up. And, it would almost be the card coming up is almost causing the reflection going, wait a minute. I haven't stopped for a while to ask myself what's working and what's not. The tarot is telling me that this is a time to be able to do that. There you are, my friend, the Tower. Like, do you know what I mean? It, as opposed to being, oh my goodness, or, the Five of Pentacles, it comes up and it's like, okay, well, where do I have that deficit resource mindset where it's the opportunity for us to be able to stop and think as we get to know some of those cards better. And, like you said, with the Two of Swords, it is a relationship you have with the cards and it changes over time. And it might be the guidance that you get from a card at a particular point in your life looks very different from the guidance that you get at another point in time, because the same card can say different things at different times and in different situations. So
100%. I feel like that with a few cards in the deck. The Ten of Swords. When I see the Ten of Swords now, I think, okay, so what I've been going through is over. And now I can move on, right? So instead of seeing that card as what's going to happen, I see it as like, you cannot move anymore. So the only way now is up, right? Like, or really looking at what's keeping you stuck there, right? Because the Ten of Swords, you're not moving, you're just there. So it is really about your interpretation and how you develop that relationship with the cards. Same with the Devil. That's a powerful card. I'm seeing that card in a whole new light, in that it's not all bad things that we hide in the shadow. It's things that we want. It's our desires. And everything that we desire, if we don't have them, it's because we're afraid to have it for some reason. Like there's something that's preventing us from having the thing that we want, or else we would already have it. So it is remarkable how those really difficult cards can become a source of power and a source of strength in terms of how we interpret that energy. So
yes. And if you want more detail in that, our last episode talked just about that, right? Dark cards.
Yes.
Was that our last one? Yes. Yeah, it was the last one.
The darkness coming into
light. Right? In our last episode. So I'm telling you, we cover some topics here. This is not your 3-minute reel, right? This is real. This is real, REAL. This is real tarot, having discussions around real tarot in real life, and not your real REEL, 3-minute. This is your card and this is what it means. Not that there's no value in that, but we're having some pretty in-depth conversations about how we use the tarot every day. Speaking of which,
exactly.
Should we use it? Should we use it? It was funny when you had talked about the idea of, drawing a card, both to learn the card as a means of learning it, but also what is it telling you? I thought, oh my goodness, we literally do that in almost every single episode. And we had talked about that because this is episode, 72? When we get to 78, though, we're going to have to celebrate that, right? That's episode 78 is going to be a celebration. We will have done one episode now, we don't cover every card of the tarot, but we would have done, that's in tarot universe, that's pretty big.
Yeah, we need to start planning that, Peter. I didn't even think about that.
Anybody have any ideas of what we should do for episode number 78 to celebrate? By all means, please put them in the comments.
Yes.
Let us know.
We would love to hear from you.
Love to hear from you. So, you got lots of time. We tend to be dropping now an episode every couple of weeks, and we'll have a bit of a break actually coming up because of travel for both Bonnie and I to do that. But we still do, I think in most episodes, not all, but in most episodes, we still draw a card at the end of the episode. And we had done that with kind of that intention of, all right, well, the best way to be able to learn the cards is to actually watch somebody do it. So are we there? Do we have something? Did you have any other tips that you wanted to add?
I have one more tip
perfect.
that I'm going to share, and then we'll get into the into drawing the cards. But So this is something sometimes that I do. And I don't read tarot for the purposes of predicting anything. I've said that many times. But sometimes if I have a day, like if I'm going to be traveling or something is happening that day, and I don't want to see a card that might sort of, I don't want to say the word trigger me, but like activate me in some way, I won't do a general pull cards. What do I need to know today? Because I know that I don't read it in a predictive way, but if like the tower shows up and the chariot and all the cards, I don't want to be like,
Not going to be, oh my goodness, my plane's going to crash.
Yeah, because if I got that information, would I actually be like, I'm not getting on the plane? Like, I don't know that I would trust that in that sense.
No.
And if I knew that ahead of time and something did happen, I wouldn't want to be like, oh, I should have listened to the cards. So I'm just saying, you have to get to know what feels good for you. So sometimes I don't want to pull cards in that moment. Sometimes I don't even have time, especially if we're traveling really early in the morning. But if I know something is happening that day and I'm like, I just don't want to pull something that I'm not going to feel really good about, I won't do it. So that's also something that you have the ability to decide when it feels good and when it doesn't. And again, that's about agency, getting to know yourself better, right? This is about knowing when you feel good enough to receive that message, because you also have to be prepared to receive the message. Tarot is very specific. It is a mirror. It shows you, right? And if you're not ready to see that, then maybe that's not the right time to pull cards. So I just wanted to say that before we went into our card draw.
Yeah. Oh no, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for adding that, because that's, I think, a very powerful message too. And reminding people that the agency actually exists inside the person that's asking the question and not the cards themselves. Or the cards have no agency over you whatsoever. So
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to pull a card.
We are. I went, I don't know, to be honest with you. So I actually have taken out this is my personal deck. So this is a deck I don't use for, because I have the same deck, like it's the Centennial edition of and I pull up the star card, isn't that beautiful? The Centennial edition of the Rider-Waite-Smith, which I have a small tin that I use for online work. And then now, anyways, I haven't taken this out. This particular deck I've never used with a client. It's always mine. So I'm not sure if I've done it here on the podcast, but it's what I'm going to use today. Because
you know what? That brings up a really great point, Peter. And thank you for sharing that. And that's another question we can even ask people. Do you have a deck that you only use for yourself, that you don't use for client work? You know, what is that deck? And because I mean, I have decks that I would never use for client work just because they're
not really client friendly either.
They're not client friendly. Exactly. But I don't have there's decks that I absolutely love to use for my own readings, but I use them for client work as well. So that's going to be an interesting thing for me to think about, of having just a deck that is mine that I don't share.
Yeah.
Right.
Now the type of deck is the deck that I use. So this is the deck that I would use mostly with clients, but this particular fifth deck, and you can't see it because I think mind me, but it sits in its own box. Like when I talk about the idea of reading for yourself and trying to make it special and ritualistic, I'm putting my money where my mouth is, because that's where my practice sits, right? I have this, and I've had this box, I don't know how long, but it has been a long time. I think I might have bought it at a pagan festival in 2004. So, it's been around for a while.
I love that.
What deck are you?
Well, you know what's funny? We can't make this stuff up, people. So the deck I decided to use today is the Light Seers Tarot by Chris Ann. Yes. And this is my first, so I had a tarot deck when I was a teenager. This is not that deck, but this was the first deck that I bought when I started learning about the tarot and using it. And I do use this for client work. And I often think this should be my sacred deck, because if something ever happens to it, like, it's so special to me because
it's the first.
So I think I might save this deck for myself and start using the same version, like this same deck, for client work, and then just keep this for me. So thank you, Peter. You gave me that.
Look at
so
that.
I'm using my special deck and you're using special deck. And we didn't even know we were going to.
Didn't even know. All right.
No.
Here we go. So the idea, what do I need to know in this time, in this space, right here, right now, in this time, in this space. All right. I pulled my card. I pulled a major arcana card today.
Did you?
I did. But shall I share? Or do you want to go?
Yeah. No, go ahead. I just pulled my card too, and this is hilarious. Okay.
Pulled the Hermit. So, interesting, right? We talk about, and of course, for me, right away, and I'll leave this card out, kind of a card of guidance, because I haven't drawn a card for myself in and by a little while, I say it might have been a few days, maybe a week. But I'm actually right now in some pretty deep study for, thing I won't quite reveal because, it's not quite there yet, but at some point in time, it will come. And I have felt very hermit-like. I think I mentioned to you before we hit the record button, I've significantly reduced my availability for client mentoring work because I've been focused so much on this particular work, which involves a lot of study and reading and writing and reflection. And it feels like this, when I look at this card, it feels very hermit-like. And then I also think the Hermit was the card of the year for 2025 for the last year. And this is a process that started during 2025, during a Hermit year. And then of course, the outcome of this particular thing for me might be to use that guidance and knowledge to then be the light that helps illuminate pathways of knowledge for other people. So all kind of, hermit things, but who knows? I'm going to leave this out, and the Hermit card might have other things to say to me over the course of the next day or two. Like you, I have several of them little card holders that, we can put cards up. But I mean, in this house, you would probably not find a room that doesn't have some element of the tarot somewhere, whether it's a print on a wall or, I've got a wooden kind of engraving of the Magician literally over on my right side hanging on the wall because it's right in front of my creative music space. And anyways, so we've got the Hermit, from an interpretation perspective, I mentioned kind of a few things. And what would you add to that?
Yeah, I love everything that you said. I pulled the Hermit for myself yesterday. So this is very, very fresh for me as well. And what I love about the Hermit too in that message is that it really reinforces the fact that whatever it is that we have to do it on our own. Yeah. So this isn't a time that people are going to help us with something. So like you, there's a project that you have to work on. The only person that can help you with this project is yourself, right? And it's true. The more that we do that and we take these, I don't know, say like little excursions or time away to be with ourselves, that helps us, tap into a part of ourselves maybe that, you're working on a specific project. That's a beautiful way to look at this. But in a more general term as well, or a more general sense, if you get the Hermit, it's like tapping into a part of you, getting to know that part of you. And then again, being that light that you can share with other people. I think that's the whole point. And I say this a lot, just in everyday life. It's like the more we work on ourselves, the better the world will be, right? Like we always think we need to change other people or we need to help other people. But if we took that away and was like, okay, what is it that I can do for myself? Because the better that I can become, then that makes the world a better place. And if we all did that, we would live in a much better world.
You think? Do you think if everybody brought their best self forward? Oh my goodness. Imagine. Yeah,
and it's getting to know that, right? Like, and that's Hermit energy. So it doesn't mean you have to be alone or, be in seclusion, but it just means it's something that you have to do on your own, really getting to know a part of you. Or again, if there's a project or something that you have to work on, it's honoring that you need to be alone to get this work done. Right. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And that's, I really love how you worded that as well. I found that very helpful. So thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank
All
you,
right.
Peter.
You've got a card for us now, dude.
I have a card. See, okay, we have to do an episode on this topic one day, I think. So, okay, so I'm using the Light Seers Tarot by Chris Ann. I pulled the Hierophant.
Oh, when I saw it, I thought, oh my goodness, is that also the Hermit? So I was like, no.
No, but it's so I have a very deep connection with this card because in numerology, I'm a 5 and the Hierophant is 5 in the tarot. So I connect very deeply with this major arcana card. And whenever I see this card, like I'll wrap myself out a little bit here, but I'm always asking for divine guidance. It's like, God, am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path? Should I be doing this? And like, give me signs. And when I get the Hierophant, it's like, oh, this is my sign. So I really look at this card as the teacher card. The person that goes out, acquires knowledge, and then brings it back and shares that with other people. And I think you said too in the Gaian Tarot, I think
It's called the teacher.
It's called the teacher, right? So that's the energy that I really associate with the card. And there's another deck, I think it's the Everyday Witch Tarot. She's teaching meditation. So I love that. So she's like the teacher in front of the class and she has her students. I'm like, yes, that's me. So it is such an affirmation for me to be like, yes, this is what you're meant to do. And it's understanding the information that is important for us to seek out. So if you get the Hierophant, it could be that you're ready to either find a mentor or a teacher, or you're ready to be that for somebody else. But it is this quest for knowledge. And generally it's like this higher knowledge, if we want to say that, right? Like from this more spiritual sense. So I love that because my passion is teaching in many different respects. So when I get the Hierophant, I'm like, okay, maybe I am on the right track. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to do. And teaching doesn't have to be like, teacher in a classroom. It could just be teaching what's important for you, like sharing knowledge, and not being afraid to do that. I think in our society, it's like this, like, oh, do I know enough? I have to know more. I constantly have to like be educated or have more experience or do this. And we never feel ready enough to share what it is that we know with other people. And I think the important part is just start where you are, because if you have something to share, that can absolutely help other people. So that's what I'm going to say about the Hierophant. I know that sort of goes a little bit off topic because it can mean a whole host of other things, but that's how I'm going to interpret it right now. What would you add, Peter?
No, look, I mean, I wouldn't add much at all of it. And I think the important thing too, when you're doing, to kind of get back to the premise of this episode, is when you are doing a reading for yourself, the dialogue that you have with yourself about the card you pulled is important. Because you're looking for self-guidance. So what you pull out of the card means something to you at that time. And, the idea of that higher self. You talk about, the concept of the Hierophant is the yoga teacher. And of course, I always think it's a brilliant, for a variety of reasons, right? Because and then I think about the astrology of the card, which it's a Taurus-based card, which is exceptionally grounded, exceptionally sensual, it's very tactile, and it's slow, and it's methodical in that sort of slow space, and not methodical, in your Libra space or even Virgo space, but which Virgo being the Hierophant. But it has that it is a slow moving card. So it would be a card of a yoga teacher, of a meditation teacher. And then I think it sits on the axis of the other card we drew. The Hierophant is the outward facing teacher, and the Hermit is the inward facing teacher. So, I don't know. I think, and then the other thing, though, about a yoga or a meditation teacher that is also seen in a card like the Hierophant is that there is a significant amount of knowledge that sits inside those disciplines, because the idea of disciplinary knowledge also, it lives in the realm of the Hierophant. So you are a yoga teacher, and not anybody can go out and teach yoga. There's actually a certain amount of hours of instruction that you needed to have done to be able to say, hey, I have certification to be able to go and teach yoga. So there's the hierophant, there's the basis of knowledge that exists in there. There's a big difference between somebody who practices yoga and somebody who can teach it. And I think the hierophant is there to remind people as well of the knowledge base that they have. So it says, put what you know out into the world, because you know there's something that you know a lot about that is worthy of sharing with other people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
it is a card of confidence and self-worth as well. Like it's putting what you know out into the world. It's not just, like there is a depth to the hierophant and the hierophant's knowledge as well.
Mm-hmm. And then I think as well is honoring what it is that you're seeking, right? So for somebody that, and I think Chris Ann actually says this in the guidebook. I'm not going to say it verbatim because I don't know for sure, but almost like be your own guru, because a lot of times we place people on pedestals because they do know more than us. But at the same time, it's like honor what it is that you want to know and honor the path that you want to go on and go there and seek what it is. Because inside of us, we know everything, right? Like if we go back to the high priestess, we're our own eternal knowledge. Like we have access to everything.
Correct.
And the only way that we can receive that information is by going within. So it's like you already have what you seek inside of you, which again is like the heart or the hermit. But this is like, if there's something that you're wanting to seek, go on your own accord, not because you've been taught that you have to believe something in a certain way. So it does give you agency to really go towards what it is that you're curious about, but also don't put people on such a pedestal that they're better than you, maybe because they have more information. Like the teacher is always the student as well. So we're always learning from each other. I guess that's what I want to say.
Look at this. Life learning, philosophy, insight, guidance. You get it all here, people.
Get it all
get
here.
It all.
In the tarot, of all places.
Yes.
The thing that I was afraid of most of my life.
In this tarot space, correct. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, all your knowledge with us today. Bonnie, that was great.
Well, thank you, Peter.
Pleasure.
You teach me so much, and I love when you bring the astrological, insight into everything, because that is so not part of.
Well, that's good. It'll be a good segue when you ask me what I've got going on, and
okay.
It'll be a great segue. Should I go there first?
Yes, Peter. Okay. What do you have going on? Where can people find you? How can they sign up?
So always, and we're getting to the end, actually. So Cards of Aries will either have just been released live or about to be released live, depending on when you listen to this podcast. But it is part of a series called The Cards of the Zodiac, where, I go through 90 minutes. It's a 90-minute workshop, and it's or webinar. It's part theory. So it's a great way, and I'll say a unique way to learn the cards, because we look at the cards from an astrological lens, which means we don't go in order of, suit. We don't go in order of the major arcana or anything like that. We actually look at the cards that are associated to each sign of the zodiac in order of the zodiac. So we spend about half our time kind of learning the cards through that lens, and the other half is more practical. They're reflection questions that are based on some of those cards, based on some of the astrological energies that are associated with each card. And I will tell you, the price point, $23 Canadian for each webinar. Like, it's less than the price of coffee, a coffee a day. It's a pretty good deal. Mm-hmm. And some of the comments of some of the students that have taken it have been, very positive. So if that is something that is of interest to you, if that astrological tarot connection is of interest, come and check out the Cards of Aries. Like I said, we're almost at the end. There will be a bundle of courses that will happen once it's done, and I'm going to bundle them together by element. So look for that. Mm-hmm. So it'll be the cards of fire, it'll be the cards of water, cards of air, cards of Earth, again, through that astrological lens. Again, they'll all be pre-recorded courses, and I'll pull out the things that are no longer timely. But if you want to learn the tarot through that lens, then do that. Of course, I still have some time available for consultation and mentoring, but I really am putting that on the back burner for now and concentrating on, I won't say on the things I love doing, because I love doing it all, but that the course, the Cards of the Zodiac, is something that I committed to complete for a year. I love doing it. I love the small but engaged community that we have learning it. So you can check that out. You can visit our website at tarotwithbonnieandpeter.com, or you can go to my website, which is peterwhitetarot.com. Either one would lead you to my courses. So long-winded way of saying, come and visit that space. So Bonnie, what about you? What have you got coming up? Where can people find you?
Yes. Okay. So people can find me the same at tarotwithbonnieandpeter.com. You can also go to my website, which is breathewithbonnie.com. To find out what I have going on, I would suggest signing up for my newsletter. I always send out what, new series I have coming up, or 5 classes or workshops. I love to help people hear their inner voice more, right? So that's like things I love to teach is yoga nidra, which is really guided rest, breath work, which helps us, release some energy that we may have stuck in the body that's preventing us maybe from stepping into something we're ready to step into. And of course, the tarot that I use for insights. I also blend tarot and breath work. So if you're interested in that, contact me. But all my offerings are on my website. And if you have any questions, reach out to me. So that's where you can find me.
That's great. And listen, thank you very much for finding us, here at Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. We really appreciate this community. If you get great insight and guidance from this podcast, then please like it, share it, engage by comments. We would love to hear from you. We had mentioned beforehand with episode 78 coming up in the near future. Give us some ideas around what you would like us to do to celebrate a 78. That's a full tarot deck worth of episodes. Again, thank you for being here on Tarot with Bonnie and Peter. We'll see you again real soon. Bye for now.
Bye.